Hey guys, James here with Waterford Business Solutions. And a common thing that a lot of my clients want to learn about and want to work on is inventory tracking. And while this is a vital thing to do, especially to get accurate books, there's so many different things that we want to work on first to get you there. Many of our clients are coming to us never really having read their profit and loss statement, never really having read their balance sheet, never really having even worked on their books. And so we have to start from a baseline with everything here to get that started and get a solid base of accounting under us before we get into even starting on or even considering doing inventory tracking. Now, it's one thing to do inventory tracking from a perspective of, hey, I'm just wanting to know what I have on hand so that I know what I need to go buy, or I know what I am trying to, or if I'm losing equipment, if I'm losing materials that my employees are potentially stealing from me, whatever it may be. That's one thing. And all day long, feel free to do that. But it's a 100% different thing to want to do inventory tracking to follow your books. And quite frankly, inventory tracking, while it is very beneficial and everyone should do it, not everyone is set up and has the ability to do it. Even when you're just trying to figure out what you have on hand or if your guys are taking something from you, the time involved in recording all that, the time involved in doing all of that is pretty extensive. It takes a good bit. I've worked with companies from one-man shows all the way up to million, $2 million, $3 million a month shows that they are doing tons and tons of sales, which that's going to matter a lot more than the one-man show. A lot of times what I tell clients is if you're a 1, 2, even a 3 truck show, there's so many other things that you can spend your time, you can spend your energy, and you can spend your efforts worrying about other than inventory tracking. I get most business coaches, I get most business professionals, they're going to say inventory tracking is vital for you. But when we look at smaller companies like that, the 1 to 3 truck shows, you're not really looking at having a high enough inventory to make it worth the time. A lot of times when you're in those 1 to 3 truck shows, you're not buying extensive stock. You're not buying and holding on to stuff. You are buying to do the repair currently in front of you. You're buying to do the install currently in front of you. Sure, you may stock up on 5, 6, 7 units before the busy season, the summer months, whatever it may be for you, before that hits. Or if you're an electrician and you know that there's going to be an increase on generator prices, you may go ahead and stock up on a handful of units. But when you're that 1 to 3 truck show, you're not buying 10, 20, 30, 50 units at a time. And when it comes to the parts, when it comes to the fittings, when it comes to the wiring, when it comes to the ductwork, when it comes to the screws, everything like that, it's so hard to track that in the first place. There are ways to do it. Trust me, I've worked with clients to get there. And I'm sure that we'll do some more videos in the future going a little bit more into detail with it. But when we're talking just inventory tracking as a whole, you really need to start by considering your size and considering the time that you have to spend on this inventory tracking. Now, when you start getting above 3 trucks, inventory tracking starts to make a little more sense. You're probably going to hold a little more stock. You're definitely going to be having guys doing multiple installs in a given day, more than likely. You're going to have guys doing a lot of different repairs. If we're in plumbing or we're in electrical, you're probably going to keep a stock of a lot of breakers. You're going to keep a stock of a good bit of fittings, a good bit of valves, different things like that. So that makes a little more sense. But I still want to roll it back to what is worth your time and effort. If we've got 5 trucks on the road but everyone's on the road and the only person in the office is your office manager and maybe an assistant, and their job is to be scheduling jobs for you, be collecting payments, things like that, do they have time to also spend inventorying everything? At the end of the day, do your guys have time to inventory everything? Do you, as the business owner, have time to inventory everything? When we're talking inventory, it's not something where we just sit down and we say, oh, I bought this, oh, I sold this, okay, I'm good. We've got to constantly be keeping track of it. And on that subject of, oh, I bought this, oh, I sold this, one of the biggest things to properly track inventory is managing and tracking your AP. A lot of smaller businesses, they're just paying all their bills at once, at the end of the month or at the end of the period. They're not having to pay multiple times throughout the month. They're not worried as much about AP tracking until we get into those larger shows where we've got 5, 10, 15 trucks on the road. That's when we start seeing AP being tracked a lot more. And a vital thing to tracking your inventory is going to be AP. Because we've got to make sure every single time you buy something that we're tracking exactly what you buy and increasing your inventory by that. Your invoicing has to work pretty much the same way. Every single time you sell something out of your inventory, we've got to make sure that it's being tracked to be recorded and to reduce your inventory. There's multiple different ways to do inventory. There's multiple different systems to use for inventory. But inventory as a whole is going to require a lot of footwork at the beginning and at the end, because we've got to make sure whenever you're buying something, we're recording that addition. Whenever we're selling something, we're recording that subtraction, and we are regularly going through and counting, cross-checking, and verifying our inventory so that we know that our quantity on hand, everything that we have on hand, is accurate and that we're not missing stuff. Because if you're not doing that, we've got no way to have an accurate representation of what your inventory is on the books. Now, when I get to my guys that are doing $300,000, $500,000, $1 million a month in sales, $300,000, $500,000 that is, $1 million a month or more in sales, they've got enough movement, they've got enough field labor to warrant having a warehouse manager, someone who their job is to help track that inventory. If we're at that rate, absolutely, let's make sure that we've got an inventory system in place. But when we're in the smaller areas here, someone has got to spend the time to do that. So who has got the time to do that? And you as the business owner, let's be honest, are probably going to be the one stuck with it. Now, understand, as an accountant, as a financial advisor, as a business growth coach, my goal is always for you to understand your inventory, because that lets us make sure that your material costs are representative of exactly what you did in that given month. We talked earlier this year about material trends and the trends that we want to see. The most accurate way to make sure that those material trends are matching our sales is that we have inventory in place, and as we are doing those sales, we're marking what inventory is used on the jobs, and we're costing out and putting that onto our P&L for exactly what we used on those jobs. So super, super vital there to make sure that we see and understand all of that. When we're talking accuracy of AP, it's going to be more accurate with inventory, because while we know that we're matching up to your vendor bills and everything, we aren't just putting everything to an expense that you're not going to use for a month, 2 months, whatever. So it's giving us a better AP understanding, it's giving us a better material metric, it's giving us a better gross profitability metric, it's giving us a better net profitability metric. Every single one of those is super vital. And so I do strongly support inventory, but inventory must make sense for the labor involved in doing it. We can use a built-in system with QuickBooks to do inventory. It works, don't get me wrong. But you've got to modify your invoicing to align with that. We can pull in a third-party system like Ply or like Sortly, something like that, where we can get some direct communication from your manufacturer there to see all that coming in. But it's not going to run itself. You're still going to have a time commitment there to be seeing all of this here. And when we're dealing with those time commitments and everything, when we're dealing with the involvement in your business, you as the business owner, the ultimate goal is generally to be working on the business, not in the business. And so if we're adding inventory to your plate, it's just adding one more thing that you have to think about and you have to worry about. So we really want to avoid that as much as possible. If inventory is something that you want to do, that's great, but we've got to make sure that we're keeping it accurate, especially doing counts on a regular basis. Because at the end of the year, if we're tracking inventory, we've got to report that to the IRS. The other thing to keep in mind if you're going to track inventory is inventory doesn't count as a business tax write-off until you physically used it. So if you've got $100,000 of inventory sitting in your warehouse that you bought all of this stuff to use next year or on future jobs, and it's December 31st, that $100,000 isn't a tax write-off. So that's another thing that you've got to keep in mind with inventory. Overall, when we're talking inventory, there's a few key things that we have to think about and we have to make sure that you are ready to do. First and foremost, we need to make sure that your profit and loss or income statement is broken out the way that you want it, and that your material breakdown is broken out the way you want it, because that material breakdown is going to influence your inventory. Then we've got to make sure that you've got a solid accounts payable tracking method. That way, every single bill that comes in, every vendor that you use that's sending you a bill, we've got some way to track that. We've got some way to record it. We've got some way to enter it. And then we've also got the payments and statements at the end. We've got to make sure both of those are done before we even start considering inventory. Once both of those are done, we can reverse engineer into how are we going to invoice this? What's it going to look like? How's that going to happen? And we're going to use that in conjunction with your inventory system. So your invoicing system and whatever inventory system you want to use, we've got to figure out how can we make those two communicate together so that when you make this sale in your invoicing system, your inventory system recognizes the reduction of sale. It communicates with your accounting system that it's coming out of your inventory and that you're spending that money on equipment to move it to your profit and loss statement. It's all building on top of each other. We've got to have that AP to record the inventory. We've got to have that material breakdown and that P&L income statement to see where those expenses are going. We've got to have that invoicing system to tell us, hey, I sold this, and we've got to have that inventory system to track how much do I have, how much should I pay for this, what's left on hand, everything like that. So that's the 4 key components that we're going to have to work with here. Then we've got to build on top of that. And we've got to say, okay, I've got all of this in place. Now what's the time commitment for all of this? I've got to at least do a biannual inventory of everything that I'm going to inventory. Or I've got to do a quarterly inventory of everything. Whatever you're going to say. I recommend minimum biannual. I really recommend quarterly for clients because it's making sure that everything is taken care of, recorded, and cross-checked there. So it's super vital that we look at everything there. So what's the time commitment to have someone do that inventory, record that inventory, and how accurate are we staying? Are we, we're exactly on par, or are we, wow, we're missing 10 units. What the hell happened? Well, if we're consistently missing 10 units, we've got one of two issues. Either someone's taking a lot of stuff from you, or your system is not set up to properly record the fact that stuff is being sold. And that's why we've got to make sure everything is set up correctly here. It's a very, very complicated, because there's so many different pieces to this machine here. There's so many cogs working together. The other big thing that we really need to consider with inventory is always going to fall down to what is worth inventory tracking. You can track inventory on everything. Trust me. For cleaners, we have tracked the amount of bleach that a home cleaner, an exterior cleaner has. We have tracked with a house cleaner, an interior cleaner, a maid, how much of each chemical they have, and they weigh it after each and every day, and I've done that. There's a time commitment to that. Is it worth it for you? Is it worth it to pay your staff? Is it worth that headache to do it? Maybe, maybe not. Personally, I don't see a huge benefit to it. It didn't affect these clients' books by a lot, but it did provide a reassurance to them that they were pricing correctly, that they were not being stolen from, and to the client, it mattered. So we made it work. As a plumber, as an electrician, as HVAC, what matters to you? Do you want the guys to be counting every single PVC fitting or every single PEX fitting that you have and keeping track of, okay, I used this many on this job, and then when it comes time for inventory, you've got to do this? As an electrician, do you want them to be tracking every single wire nut they're using, every single screw they're using, every single brace they're using, every single wire protector they're using? Is it worth them putting all that in? Is it worth you tracking that during inventory time? As an HVAC technician, does it make sense to track every single inch of duct tape? Does it make sense to track every screw? Does it make sense to track every single thing like that? So the other thing you really have to consider with inventory is what is worth your time to inventory. Ultimately, if you want to know the truth, everything should be inventoried. But you're also not Walmart. You don't have barcodes. And yes, we can set up systems that have barcode tracking and everything like that. But is it going to be used? How efficient is it going to be? Things like that. And how much staff do you have to do that inventory? Walmart has a huge staff, even though it may not look like it all the time, but they've got a huge staff so that they can go through and do the inventory and cross stuff out that they have. If you're looking to implement inventory, if you are struggling with your finances, if you just want to have a better understanding about your gross profitability, your net profitability, your cash flow in your company, that's why Waterford is here. That's why I started Waterford, is to allow home service professionals and pros just like you to get that understanding. Give us a call today at 864-351-0852. or shoot us an email at info@waterfordbusiness.com, and we would love to figure out how we can help you and get you to the place that you would like to be. If you've enjoyed this video, please go ahead and like and share it. Also leave a comment. Engagement really helps to spread awareness and help more people see this video. Thank you for joining us today. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel if you want to get more videos just like this, and I'll see you next time.